when the police showed up at my door asking if I'd tampered with evidence. I realized how far I'd fallen, not just in their eyes, but in my own. I used to be the kind of woman who believed truth always won, that love meant loyalty. But love, I learned, can be a weapon when it's placed in the wrong hands. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I tried to expose my husband's betrayal, only to lose my own reputation in the process before the storm. My life was simple, or at least I thought it was. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind with trimmed hedges and the sound of sprinklers in the early morning. My husband, Mark, worked as a financial advisor, and I was an art teacher at a local high school. We met in college. He had this easy charm, a kind of warmth that drew people in. I fell for his laughter, the way he'd listen to my stories like they mattered. After 10 years of marriage, that laughter had dulled into something quieter, something distant. But I told myself that's what happens. Love changes, right? It matures. Every morning I'd pack his lunch, pour my coffee, and kiss his cheek before he left. He'd smile, distracted, eyes already on his phone. It wasn't new, just one of those small things you accept when life gets busy. But the small things, they're what haunt you later. There was a time when our kitchen was full of laughter. Now it was filled with silence and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Our daughter Sophie was away at college. Sometimes she'd call just to ask how we were. I'd tell her everything was fine, that her dad and I were doing great. I didn't want her to worry. She adored her father, and I didn't want to taint that. Mark and I had been trying to reconnect. At least, that's what I believed. Friday date nights, small gestures, even a weekend getaway. But somehow, even when we were together, I felt alone. It started with little things. A second phone I found in his gym bag. The one he claimed was for work. A text message that flashed on the screen while he was showering, a name I didn't recognize. Followed by a red heart. I told myself it must be a client, maybe a joke. Denial is comforting, it's soft. Like a blanket you pull tighter even when it's smothering you. But one night while he was asleep, I couldn't resist. I opened that phone, there it was, a conversation thread that unraveled the life. Thought I had. Her name was Claire. The messages weren't explicit, but they were intimate inside jokes, secret meetups, confessions of love. My hands trembled as I scrolled, screen glowing like a confession booth in the dark. I put the phone down and just sat there, listening to Mark's breathing. Steady, peaceful dot. How could someone sleep so soundly with so much deceit resting on their chest? The next morning, I made him breakfast. Eggs, toast, his favorite black coffee, because that's what women like me do. We don't explode. We calculate. We endure. That day, as he left for work, I watched him from the window, his shoulders squared. His suit pressed. The perfect husband. I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger yet. It was something colder. I decided I needed proof. Not just for myself, but for the world. For everyone who'd ever told me I was lucky to have him, I started gathering evidence, text messages, photos, credit card records. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Art Projects. Inside, it was all him. Receipts from hotels he never mentioned, perfume stains on his shirts, timestamps that didn't match his alibis. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but the truth is, betrayal has a way of twisting your morality. You start thinking justice means control. That exposure will heal the wound at night. I'd sit in our living room, the glow from my laptop screen flickering across framed wedding photos. His smile, my veil, our vows, till death do us part. I wondered if promises died quietly or if they screamed when they broke. Days turned into weeks. The more I uncovered, the more obsessed I became. I began recording his calls, tracking his locations through shared calendars. It wasn't enough to know I wanted to make sure he couldn't lie his way out of it. My best friend Marla noticed the change in me. "Elena, you look exhausted," she said one afternoon over coffee. "What's going on?" I hesitated. Telling her meant saying it out loud, making it real. But I did. Her eyes widened. "Are you sure? Maybe there's some explanation." "There's not," I said. My voice didn't shake. It was steady, almost frighteningly so. I just need proof. Real proof. Marla sighed. And then what? You'll confront him. I stared into my cup, the dark surface reflecting my tired eyes. No, I whispered. I'll expose him. Marla didn't like the sound of that. She said revenge never ends well. But she didn't know what it felt like to have your life turned into a lie. I spent nights crafting my plan carefully, quietly. I'd leak everything at once. The photos, the texts, the emails. Not to humiliate him, but to make the truth undeniable. At least, that's what I told myself. I didn't realize I was walking into a trap of my own making, one that would cost me far more than him. The night I found out everything for certain, it wasn't some dramatic discovery, no lipstick on a collar or hidden voicemail. It was a sound, a soft giggle carried through the thin crack of Mark's office door. He was supposed to be on a conference call, but I knew that laugh. It was hers. I froze in the hallway, heart pounding in my ears. He hadn't noticed me come home early. Through the slit of the door, I saw his face lit by the glow of his laptop, smiling, tender, almost boyish. Yeah, I miss you too, he murmured. I'll book the same place next weekend. Don't worry, she'll never know. My knees went weak. The room spun. I stepped back before the floorboards creaked. Before he could see me, that night I couldn't sleep. Every time he turned beside me, I flinched. His hand brushed my shoulder, and I had to bite my lip to keep from crying. He was there, but not really. His body next to mine was a ghost of the man I married. The next morning while he showered, I opened his laptop. His password had changed. My heart sank. He knew that's when paranoia set in. Every glance, every silence felt loaded. I started noticing how he'd guard his phone, how he'd take calls in the garage, how his smiles had timing. Perfect. Practiced fake dot once while cooking dinner. I asked casually, so who was that on the phone last night? He didn't even look up. Client Y? Just wondering, I said, stirring the pasta. He smiled faintly. That same polite smile strangers wear at the grocery store. You've been asking a lot of questions lately. The words stung more than I expected. I'm your wife. Mark, I think I'm allowed to ask questions. He leaned against the counter, watching me with an amused kind of calm. Of course you are, he said softly. As long as you trust the answers. Something in that tone, the arrogance of it, snapped something inside me. I realized he wasn't just cheating. He thought I was too weak to do anything about it. That night, I made a decision. If he wanted to play games, I'd beat him at his own. It started small. I copied his contacts from his phone while he slept. I found Claire under a fake name, Charles Work. Cute. Then I installed a discreet recorder app on his phone. It synced automatically with my email. Within days, I had everything. The calls, the hotel details, even his voice whispering. I love you. The irony was cruel. He thought he was so careful, but I knew every word, every lie. The more I learned, the colder I became. I stopped crying. I stopped pleading. My love had calcified into strategy. I bought a burner phone. I used it to send anonymous messages to Claire. At first, harmless small nudges to test her reaction. Does he still tell you he's leaving his wife? She replied within minutes. Who is this? I didn't answer. Later, she texted again. If this is Elena, you need help. That one made me laugh. Help? I was the one who'd been lied to, betrayed, humiliated, and yet somehow I was the one who needed help. I started crafting what I called the expose. I gathered screenshots, voice notes, even financial proof of his hotel bookings. I organized it into folders, a digital museum of betrayal. My plan was simple. Send it to his company, her office, and a few carefully chosen friends and family. Not out of spite, but justice. Or so I told myself. But before I could send anything, the tables turned. One afternoon, I came home to find Mark waiting for me. His expression calm, but his eyes sharp. Predatory Elena, he said, we need to talk. I froze. About what? He gestured toward the table. My laptop was open. My folders, all of them visible. I know what you've been doing, he said evenly. My heart sank. What are you talking about? He leaned back, arms crossed. The recordings. The messages. The little anonymous texts you've been sending to my clients. You think I wouldn't find out? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. How did he know? Then he pulled out his phone and showed me an email. It was one of the ones I'd sent. But the sender had been traced back. My mistake. I'd slipped once, used my home Wi-Fi, Elena, he said softly, almost pitying. You've crossed a line. I crossed a line. I snapped. You've been lying to me for months. Cheating. His face didn't change. You're paranoid. You're imagining things. Claire is a business partner. I told you that. Don't lie to me. But he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he smiled a slow, chilling smile. You're spiraling, Elena. You've been unstable for a while now. I tried to be patient, but this. He gestured to the laptop. This is proof that you're out of control. Something inside me broke. I grabbed the laptop and slammed it shut. You can't twist this, Mark. I have proof. He shrugged, almost amused. Do you? Or do you just have a collection of things that look like proof? Because right now all anyone will see is a jealous wife obsessed with ruining her husband's life. My hands shook. You wouldn't— Oh, I would, he said, voice low. And I'll make sure everyone knows how unstable you've become. You want to destroy me? Fine, but I won't go down alone. That night, after he left the house for some air, I sat on the floor of the kitchen, shaking. I had built this entire web to expose him, and somehow he had flipped it on me. He had the charm, the control, the calm. And I had become exactly what he wanted people to see: emotional, frantic, unreliable. When the first rumor reached me, whispered by a coworker, then a neighbor, I realized he'd already started his campaign. People were concerned about me, about my mental health. And soon after, an email from the school board arrived. A complaint had been filed by an anonymous source accusing me of harassment and privacy violations. He had beaten me at my own game. I didn't leave the house for 3 days after that. Every time my phone buzzed, felt a surge of dread. Another email, another whisper, another blow to the version of myself I used to be. The woman who was respected, trusted, admired. Now, I was a rumor. A headline in hushed tones. Poor Elena, she's not doing well. I'd become the unstable wife in everyone's story. But when humiliation burns long enough, it hardens into something sharper. Resolve. On the 4th day, I got out of bed, showered, and stood in front of the mirror. My face looked older, tired, pale, but my eyes were different. Steadier, I whispered to my reflection, he thinks he's won, but he doesn't know me anymore. That day, I went to see Marla. She opened the door and hugged me before I could speak. Elena, everyone's talking. What's going on? I sat at her kitchen table, my hands trembling around a cup of tea. He turned it all on me, Marla. The evidence, the texts, everything. He's making people think I'm unstable. Her eyes filled with disbelief. That's insane. Can't you just show them the messages? I shook my head. He deleted everything. Wiped his accounts, reset his phone. Even the backup drives are encrypted. The only copy I have now looks like I edited it. She leaned forward. You mean he planted something? I nodded slowly. He's framing me for falsifying evidence. And now, if I push this any further, I'll look like exactly what he says. I am obsessive, delusional. For a moment, silence sat between us. Then Marla said softly, You can't fight him the way he fights you. You'll lose. I know, I whispered. That's why I need a new plan. So the next week, I started gathering real proof. This time, legally. Carefully, I met with a private investigator named Daniel Carter. He was older, quiet, the kind of man who'd seen too many broken marriages to be shocked by anything. After I told him everything, he just nodded. I've seen this before. Gaslighting, psychological manipulation. He's building a narrative where you're the villain, and the only way to counter that is with something he can't twist. What kind of something? I asked. Verification. Independent evidence. surveillance, timestamps, eyewitnesses. But it'll take time, and you'll have to stay quiet while we work. Staying quiet was the hardest part. Every day felt like a performance. Mark would text me as if nothing had happened. Hope your day's going well, or dinner tonight. As though we were just a normal couple. I replied with short, polite answers. Sure, okay, see you then. He wanted me rattled. I gave him calm dot at dinner. He talked about work, laughed about coworkers. Not once did he mention the tension between us. He was rehearsing for his audience, the people he'd told I was struggling. It was a performance, and he was winning the applause. But I was recording everything this time. Carefully, cleanly, with timestamps and witnesses. Every smirk, every contradiction, every word that exposed his lies. Daniel helped me compile it into a timeline. We'll catch him slipping, he said. Men like him always do. 2 weeks later, he did. He forgot to log out of a shared family account on our tablet, the one synced to his work emails. I found a thread between him and Claire that made my blood run cold. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning something. Don't worry, baby, he wrote. Once she breaks down completely, I'll get full control of the house and assets. She's already halfway to self-destructing. My hand shook as I scroll. Claire replied. Just make sure she doesn't pull something drastic. You said she's been unstable. His response came seconds later. That's the plan. The more she reacts, the better. Once she cracks, everyone will believe me. That was the moment the last piece of fear inside me burned away. He wasn't just unfaithful. Kay was orchestrating my downfall. I saved every message, backed it up, and printed copies. Then I sent them to Daniel. He read them, his jaw tightening. This is your smoking gun, but we need to handle it right. No emotional reactions, just facts. Still, I couldn't help it. That night when Mark came home, couldn't look at him the same way. He kissed my cheek, a casual, practiced motion, and I stepped back. Don't. He raised an eyebrow. What's wrong now? Nothing, I said. My voice was steady. I'm just done pretending. He smirked. You say that a lot lately? I met his eyes. And you lie a lot lately? The smile faltered just slightly. He didn't like when I didn't play my role. He sat down, pouring himself a drink. You really need to stop this, Elena. People are worried. Marla told me you've been acting paranoid. My heart froze. Marla, he noticed my reaction and smiled faintly. Oh, she didn't mean any harm. She's just concerned. You've been isolated, tense. Maybe you should talk to someone. His words hit like a punch. He'd gotten to her. Or maybe he'd just planted enough doubt that she didn't know what to believe anymore. I realized then that I couldn't trust anyone. Not until this was over. The next day, I went to Daniel's office. He's turning everyone against me, I said. Friends, neighbors. Even my colleagues are avoiding me. Daniel nodded grimly. He's building his case, but we're building ours too. Don't lose focus. Losing everything else, I whispered. He leaned forward. Then make sure you don't lose yourself. By the end of the month, Daniel had everything ready. Recordings, email threads, location logs, all verified. All admissible. We even found that Mark had transferred funds into Claire's account using a business expense cover. For Dot, it was enough to dismantle his image. Not through revenge, but through truth. But before I could decide what to do with it, Mark made his final move. One morning, I received a letter from my school district. Effective immediately, I was placed on administrative leave pending investigation into allegations of harassment and falsified evidence. He had filed an official complaint with forged screenshots. To back it up, he beat me to the punch, again as I sat staring at the letter. One thought echoed in my mind. He wants me to break. But this time, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. If he wanted a war of truth, he was about to get one. When word spread that I'd been suspended from the school, the whispers turned into open stares at the grocery store. Parents I'd taught for years suddenly found reasons to turn their carts the other way. Online, subtle posts appeared. Some people you think you know. Vague enough to deny, pointed enough to wound, and through it all, Mark carried himself like a grieving saint. He went to work, kept his routine, posted pictures with captions like praying for healing during difficult times. People loved him for it. Meanwhile, I sat in my silent house, surrounded by the wreckage of my own intentions. The walls felt closer each day, the air heavier. Every photo on the mantle, our wedding, Sophie's graduation, family vacations, mocked me with its frozen smiles. One afternoon, I saw a message from Sophie. Just 2 words, "Mom, call me." When I answered, her voice was shaky. "Dad told me about..." "What's happening? Is it true?" My throat tightened. "What did he tell you?" "That you've been," she hesitated, "harassing one of his coworkers. That you're not well." Tears blurred my vision. "Sophie, listen to me. None of that is true. Your father is lying to you." She was silent for a moment. "Then why would he say that?" "Because he's trying to destroy me," I said quietly. "To protect himself? I don't understand." I wanted to tell her everything, the messages, the recordings, the lies, but she was too young to see her father that way. I could hear it in her voice, the disbelief, the confusion. She wanted to trust both of us. "I'll explain everything soon," I said softly. "But for now, please don't take sides. Just stay in school, okay?" "Mom, please, Sophie." The call ended with both of us crying. And for the first time since it all began, I felt the full weight of what Mark had taken, not just my reputation, but my daughter's faith in me. The next day, Daniel called. "I've got something," he said. When I met him, he looked grim but determined. "Your husband's been clever, but not perfect. He's been using his work computer for personal communication. The company monitors everything, including deleted emails." He handed me a printed report. I scanned it and my breath caught. There they were, the original threads between him and Claire, with timestamps, attachments, even location data proving their affair. And there was more messages showing how he discussed using mental health as a strategy to discredit me. One email to a colleague said, "She's fragile. If she acts out, don't engage. Just document everything. I'll handle it." It wasn't just proof of his affair, it was proof of manipulation. Premeditated, methodical. Daniel leaned back. "If we give this to his employer, it'll blow back hard. But we can also go to the press. You'd risk exposure, but it would destroy his narrative." I sat in silence. For months, I'd wanted to expose him. But now, looking at those papers, all I felt was exhaustion. "What would you do?" I asked quietly. Neil hesitated. "I'd tell the truth, not for revenge, but for closure." That night, I wrote a statement. Not a rant. Not an attack, just the truth. Calm, detailed, documented. I included copies of the verified emails, the timestamps, the pattern of manipulation. I sent it to 3 places: his company's HR department, my school board, and one trusted journalist I knew through a friend. And then I waited. The next morning, my phone exploded. Messages from colleagues, neighbors, even strangers. Shock, apologies, disbelief. The journalist had published the story under the headline, "Financial Advisor Accused of Gaslighting. Wife in Elaborate Cheating Cover-Up." Within hours, Mark's world began to unravel. His company placed him on suspension pending investigation. Claire deleted her social media. The man who had controlled every detail of his image was suddenly being dissected by the public he'd manipulated so easily. For the first time in months, I could breathe. But victory didn't feel sweet. It felt hollow, because even as the truth came out, I realized something painful. You can't unring a bell. The damage to my name, the whispers. The doubt didn't vanish overnight. People still looked at me differently, with a mix of pity and caution. Once a story spreads, even the truth can't erase the stain completely. Mark called me that night. I almost didn't answer, but something in me needed to hear what he'd say. His voice was tight, strained. "You think you've won?" "I didn't win anything," I said quietly. I just stopped losing. You ruined my career, he hissed. No, I replied. You did that the moment you chose to lie. He laughed bitterly. You think people care about the truth? They'll forget this in a month. But you'll always be the crazy wife who couldn't handle being left. I let the silence hang between us, then said softly, maybe, but at least I can sleep at night knowing I didn't destroy someone's life for sport. For a moment, I thought I heard his voice waver. But then he hung up. That was the last time I ever heard from him directly. Weeks passed. The investigation confirmed everything. Mark lost his job, his professional license under review. Claire moved out of state. I was reinstated at the school. The board issued a formal apology. Though the words felt like patchwork over a wound too deep for quick healing. Some colleagues welcomed me back warmly. Others kept their distance, cautious, uncertain. The scandal had changed me, and they sensed it. I didn't smile as easily, didn't trust as quickly, but I carried myself with a quiet steadiness that no rumor could shake anymore. Then, one afternoon, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a single page, a handwritten note from Mark. You won. I hope you're happy. I loved you once, you know. Maybe still do. But you were never supposed to fight back. I stared at the words for a long time, then folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer. It didn't hurt like it used to. It just felt final. Later that night, I sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky was streaked with the kind of red that fades into soft gold, the kind that makes you believe. For a moment, in healing, Marla came by, holding 2 cups of coffee. I read the article. She said, Elena, I'm so sorry I doubted you. I smiled faintly. You weren't the only one. She sat beside me. You really went through hell. Maybe, I said quietly, but sometimes hell is where you find the truth. In the days that followed, I began piecing myself back together. Not the woman I was before, but someone stronger. I started painting again, small pieces at first. Colors that spoke where words had failed me. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. For the first time in months, the silence of my home didn't feel oppressive. It felt like peace. It took nearly a year before I could say the word betrayal without feeling a physical ache in my chest. Not because I forgot, but because I finally accepted that pain doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it's proof that you survived something you weren't supposed to. In the months after everything unraveled, I kept my world small. No more parties, no neighborhood barbecues, no pretending to be fine. I stopped trying to convince anyone of who I was. The truth didn't need an audience anymore. It just needed peace. I focused on my students, on rebuilding the small art program I'd almost lost. They didn't treat me like a scandal. They just called me Ms. Rivera, asked for extra paint, and argued over who got to use the last clean brush. It was grounding to be needed in such an innocent way again. Sometimes, I'd catch myself looking out the classroom window, remembering how icily life had turned upside down. One moment, you're someone's wife, someone's partner. The next, you're a stranger to your own story. But I also realized something else. I had spent so much of my marriage trying to protect the image of a life that wasn't real. Now, there was nothing left to protect. And in that emptiness, there was freedom. Sophie came home for the holidays that year. It had been months since our last real conversation, since the day she'd asked if I was not well. I didn't blame her. Mark had played his part perfectly when she walked through the door. I almost didn't recognize her. Taller, sharper, more adult. But her eyes still carried that same light I used to see. When she'd come home from school with paint on her hands, she hugged me tightly. Mom. Just one word, but it was full of something I hadn't felt in so long. Belief. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know what to believe. Dad, he made it sound like you were falling apart. But when everything came out, she stopped, shaking her head. I should have called. I should have been there, pulled her close. You were a child caught between two adults who forgot how to love honestly. You don't owe me anything, sweetheart, she cried quietly against my shoulder. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something inside me loosen. Later that night, we sat by the fireplace. She asked what really happened, every detail, every lie, every step I took to fight back. I told her the truth, not to paint myself as a hero, but as a woman who made mistakes in desperation. When I finished, she said softly, "I think I get it now. You weren't trying to hurt him. You were trying to hold on to your sanity." I nodded. Sometimes justice and survival look the same. It took time, but the world slowly stopped whispering. People moved on to new gossip, new scandals. That's the thing about public humiliation. It burns hot and fast, and then people forget. But you never do. Marla helped me move into a smaller house on the edge of town. It had a garden and a quiet porch where the sun hit the steps in the morning. I've planted rosemary, lavender, kale, and marigolds, things that could survive even when neglected. I told myself I wanted the scent, but maybe I just needed to prove I could still nurture life. On weekends, I volunteered at a women's shelter. I met others who had lived through their own storms, women who'd been silenced, blamed, gaslit into doubting their own memories. We'd sit in a circle, sharing stories. The first time I told mine, my voice trembled. By the 5th time, it didn't. By the 10th, I realized I was no longer speaking from pain, I was speaking from strength. One afternoon, I received an email from a journalist, the same one who had helped expose Mark's deception. He wrote, "Elena, your story has resonated with so many readers. Would you be open to an interview about healing and reclaiming identity after emotional manipulation?" For a long time, I hesitated. Telling the story again meant reopening old wounds. But then I remembered how lonely I'd felt when I was trapped in that web of lies. How desperately I'd searched for a voice that said, "You're not crazy. You're not alone." So I said yes. The interview was simple, just me in a quiet cafe, speaking calmly about truth, control, and recovery. I didn't mention Mark S.'s name. I didn't need to. It wasn't about him anymore. When the article was published, I received messages from women across the country. One wrote, "I thought I was the only one who lost everything for telling the truth." Another said, "You helped me see that survival isn't shameful." That night, I sat on my porch reading their words, and for the first time in years, I felt proud, not for what I'd endured, but for what I'd chosen to do with it. A few months later, I got a call from Mark's sister. "Julia, Elena," she said softly, "I thought you should know. Mark's in rehab. Drinking, mostly. He's not the same." I didn't feel triumph or pity, just a quiet understanding. The same choices that once gave him control had finally consumed him. Julia hesitated. "He asked about you, sighed. What did he say?" "That he wishes he'd stopped before it went too far. That you didn't deserve what he did." I thanked her and ended the call. That night I stood in front of the mirror, the same mirror I'd once stared into when I promised myself I'd fight back. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "I forgive you." Not for him, but for me. Because carrying hatred felt too much like carrying him. Life never went back to the way it was. It became something quieter, simpler, more honest. I began hosting small art workshops for women, stories on canvas. I called it, "We painted the emotions we couldn't speak." Some painted storms, others painted open doors. I painted light, always light breaking through dark water. Each session ended the same way, with silence. Not sadness, but peace. I realized that what I'd once seen as the end of my life was really the beginning of a truer one. One evening, Sophie joined one of my classes. She painted a single tree standing in the middle of a clearing, roots tangled but strong. When I asked her what it meant, she smiled. "It's you," she said. "You're still standing." I wanted to say something profound, but the truth was simple. I was still standing. And for me, that was enough. Sometimes I think about how easily the world can turn on you. How fast people will choose a prettier lie over an uncomfortable truth. And I wonder, How many of us are living like that right now? Smiling on the outside, breaking quietly inside, because we're afraid no one will believe us if we scream. When I look back, I don't see myself as a victim anymore. I see a woman who loved deeply, who trusted blindly, and who paid for it with her peace. But I also see a woman who rose. You see, betrayal doesn't just take from you, it teaches you. It teaches you who you are when the masks fall away. It teaches you that silence can be louder than revenge. And it teaches you that walking away, even when your heart is still bleeding, is a form of courage. Most people will never understand. There were nights I'd sit alone and replay everything, every word, every lie, every moment that still burned like acid in my chest. And I used to ask myself, why me? But the truth is, it could be anyone. It could be the woman next door, the friend who always smiles, the sister who suddenly stopped calling Dot because betrayal doesn't announce itself. It creeps in, disguised as love, disguised as care. Until one day, you realize the person you trusted the most was the one slowly rewriting your reality. If there's one thing I want anyone listening to my story to remember, it's this. You can lose everything, your marriage, your reputation, your place in the world, and still find yourself. You can stand in the ashes of a life that was built on lies and say, this time, I'll build something real. Because healing isn't about erasing what happened. It's about owning it. It's about saying, yes, I was betrayed, but I survived. And that survival is mine, not his. Sometimes I still hear the echoes of my old life, the laughter from those dinners, the way he used to call my name from across the room. It doesn't hurt the way it used to. Now, it just reminds me of how far I've come. Because you don't heal by pretending the past never existed. You heal by facing it, by walking through the ruins and planting something new. I planted lavender in my garden the spring after everything ended. It bloomed slow, shy at first, just like I did. But when it did bloom, oh, it was beautiful. A reminder that even in the soil of pain, something gentle can grow. And maybe that's the real ending to this story, not the courtroom, not the scandal, not even the apology I never got, but this quiet moment right here, where I can sit with my story and feel peace instead of shame. Because I learned that survival isn't loud. It doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like waking up, making coffee, and smiling at a sunrise you thought you'd never see again. So, to whoever's listening, maybe you're where I was. Maybe you've been silenced, blamed, made to doubt your own truth. Maybe you've been painted as the villain in someone else's story. If that's you, listen to me carefully. You are not crazy. You are not broken. And you are not alone. One day they'll tell your story differently, not as a tale of ruin, but as proof that even in the darkest betrayal, a woman can find her way back to herself. And if you ever doubt it, remember my lavender garden, because what once grew out of pain now grows out of peace. Soft pause. A reflective sigh. This was my story. The story of a woman who was betrayed, humiliated, and erased. But also the story of a woman who learned that peace isn't something you're given. It's something you reclaim. Now tell me, have you ever forgiven someone, not because they deserved it, but because you were tired of carrying them? Because sometimes letting go isn't weakness, it's survival. And maybe it's the beginning of something beautiful.